So drop a like, leave a comment, and subscribe today. Thanks everyone. And remember, we're not without you guys.
Hi everyone, and today we're going to be reading a Cork music article that was posted on the Irish Examiner the 3rd of August 2020. Here we go. Hit the like, subscribe button. Let's get stuck into it. Enjoy. Smash that like, subscribe button. Crowleys Music Centre, an iconic Cork shop. 10 years after the death of Mick Crowley, we hear about the locals and legends who frequented his famous McCurtain Street store. It's 10 years ago this month since the death of Michael Crowley, the owner of Crowley's Music Shop in Cork for over 5 decades. Mick, as he was known, had worked in the family business since he was in his early teens, and he fondly remembered by many who knew him for his generosity and patience with young musicians for the role his shop played in Cork's musical community. Tall and long-limbed was the first thing you remembered about him, but also he was one of the most calm people I've ever met. Crowley's daughter Sheena says, "He gave up school very young because his father died when he was just 10. My grandfather founded this shop, and that's where my dad wanted to be, so he started missing a lot of school. He left school at 13, but he was one of the most intelligent men I ever met." Sheena's grandfather, Tig Crowley, was a pipe major and composer who travelled by foot around Munster fixing musical instruments. He started making pipes himself, so he had a workshop in Blackpool, and then he opened his shop on Merchants Quay in 1926, Sheena says. By just 15, Mick Crowley had taken over running the family business. He had 5 sisters and his mother, and he thought he was the breadwinner and had to look after everybody. Apart from his side passion of rally driving, Crowley never questioned his choice of career. His daughter says he worked in his business for 55 years, changing location to McCurtain Street in the 80s. It was very hard to get him to go on holidays. It was even difficult to get him to take a lunch break, Sheena says. He was in his element. To him, it was like having people in his living room. Sheena lived in Holland and returned home to help out in the shop in the 1990s, although she had been working on her art career. "I'd been back about 6 months when I got offered a job illustrating books by this London company, and it was very good money." Quote, "I said, 'Dad, I got offered a job.' He said, 'You have a choice now. You can go off and get great money doing the thing that you love, or you can stay here with me and the musicians and be poor for the rest of your life," end quote. He wanted to discourage me because he knew it was a tough business. The shop eventually closed in 2013, 3 years after Mick Crowley passed away. In its heyday, Crowley's would be thronged with young musicians and teens on Saturday afternoons, and Mick Crowley's calm nature would come into its own. The place would be in absolute chaos, Sheena says. There'd be someone playing the whistle, someone on the drums, someone playing guitar, and no one would be in sync. And Mick would be pure zen in the middle of the racket. It never fazed him. In an era where supports for beleaguered performers being highlighted, it's interesting to consider the informal support network that originally emerged at Crowley's Music Centre, which in later years would also host in-store performance. Young musicians could get equipment up front and make repayments. The deal would be that when they were gigging, they'd throw something off their bill, Sheena says. Then they started earning money. The Dunn brothers were a busking violin and banjo player. You used to see them in front of Roach's stores. They came into my father and he gave them instruments, and every day they went busking, they'd come in and take a few shillings off the bill. He did the same for hundreds of people. It was much more than just a shop. Rory Gallagher bought his famous 61 Stratocaster in the shop. When Emmylou Harris played Cork Opera House and her gear got left in Amsterdam, Mick stepped into the breach and the glamorous country star paid a personal visit to thank him. Nirvana stopped by during their famed visit to Cork to play Sir Henry's, but a corn store of Crowleys' ethos was to treat all musicians as equals, fittingly demonstrated by Sheena's tale of the times Chris Christopherson tried to wangle a free guitar tuner in alongside a few purchases. My auntie Eileen told him to F off, Sheena says. He said, I'm very well known. I'm a professional musician. And my auntie Eileen said, exactly, you're the one who's able to afford it. Christy Moore. I always loved visiting Crowleys. It was an essential part of visits to Cork. Mick always had a welcome for visiting players, and there was a great atmosphere in the shop, which is sadly missed. Over a period of 25 years, I found 2 very fine second-hand guitars. One was a vintage Gibson, the other was an old Yamaha FG 180. Once I broke a string in the Cork Opera House and made a light-hearted throwaway reference to Crowleys, which was ill-advised and not in good taste. I said it jokingly without malice, but by the time it got back to Mick, the story had grown wings. Understandably, he was very upset and he wrote me a very strong letter. I printed an apology in the paper, either Echo or the Examiner, I can't remember. Thankfully, Mick forgave my stupid remark and we got back on good terms again. John Spillane. In the late 70s, myself and my friends would go into Crowley's on Saturday and look at the guitars and maybe buy plectrums or a set of strings. There were also guys trying to get out guitars and showing off, playing Stairway to Heaven or The Needle and the Damage Done. We bought a PA system from Mick Crowley on hire purchase, and my friend's dad had to put his house up as a collateral for it. Mick Crowley was tall, aloof, businesslike, and always wore a shirt and tie. I bought a beautiful Fender percussion bass there in 1979 that served me for many years and through many bands. The shop was like a community centre for musicians. You'd meet very interesting out-of-towners and many local rockers, traditional players. Stephen Travers, bass player, Miami show band. I was 19 when I finally saved enough cash to purchase my first brand new bass amp. There was no question as to where I would buy it, even though Crowley's music shop was 72 miles from my home in Carrigan-Shore. At that time, Crowley's was on Merchants Quay, and while it was much smaller than their later McCurtain Street store, it was an Aladdin's cave to me. I told the tall man behind the counter that I wanted to buy a bass amp. A young man who had been trying out a 6-string turned around to me and said, "You won't beat a Marshall." The tall man was Mick Crowley, and the young man was Rory Gallagher. Mick and I became firm friends, a friendship that lasted until his passing. John Blake. For me, Crowley's became a second home. When I was 17, I wanted to leave school to pursue music full-time, but my mother bribed me to stay in education, saying she'd buy me a guitar if I finished the Leaving Cert. For an entire year, almost every weekend, I would go into the shop to do my research. I plagued Sheena and the lads with questions, but they were always so encouraging. Years later, I ended up working there. It was a dream job, a real creative hub in the city, and a source of great joy for me personally. Mick Flannery. I loved going into Crowley's music shop. Over the years, I got to know Mick and Sheena and the staff, and they were always friendly and supportive. At night, if I and my parents were walking past the shop, my parents would stop and bow as though it were a sacred shrine. I wish it were still there. Colin Cronin. Anytime I went to Crowleys back in the day, Mick Crowley was very friendly. There was always great atmosphere in there. I picked up a guitar, a nice guitar. I would always play a bit of Don't Look Back in Anger, or Neil Young, or Bob Dylan, or I'd ask him how they play Eddie Van Halen's guitar solo in the song Beat It by Michael Jackson. And they had great instruments, brilliant instruments in the shop, in the store, in Crowley's music store. The instruments were brilliant. And you definitely always pick something up to give it a bash, and you might even buy something one of the days, like. And there was always good deals on in there. I remember one day, one of the years, I took a great camera shot outside Crowley's, and it got put to great use on an album that was never officially released, but it's released on YouTube actually, and it's used for this video now. That's the shot, and yeah, so there are my memories of Crowley's, and the staff in there were very nice, and the people that went in there were great musicians. So yeah, thanks everyone for watching. Like, subscribe, comment, smash that subscribe button. Catch you later. Corkanian rockers.
You can follow us on Facebook. Also, you can follow us on Instagram. Thanks everyone. You guys are the best. And remember, we're not without you guys.